I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, the shocking execution of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins. The shooter, the local sheriff, a man who turned himself in right after killing the judge. Here's the story. In the heart of Kentucky's coal country, a small courthouse turned into a crime scene when Sheriff Mickey Stines walked into Judge Kevin Mullins' chambers and opened fire. Just days earlier, Stines had been deposed in a civil lawsuit, a case many say weighed heavily on his mind. Investigators describe a respected lawman unraveling under pressure, his world collapsing behind the badge. The motive remains a mystery, but whispers of instability and sleepless nights haunt those who knew him. As the community mourns the death of the judge and questions echo through the hills, one haunting thought lingers. Was Sheriff Stines' trigger pulled by rage or by a man losing his grip on reality? We are getting some brand new insight, finally, after all these months and months and months of wondering what was going on. Kentucky State Police did a series of interviews with people interacting with, connected to, people who worked for Sheriff Mickey Stines and who worked in the courthouse. And as a result of these interviews and the information that was gotten, the defense, Mickey Stines' own attorney, took some of the information from these interviews and put it in some of his motion papers, trying to get the indictment dismissed. I don't want to talk about the dismissal of the indictment. I want to talk about these interviews that the Kentucky State Police did with witnesses, people who knew and were observing the sheriff in the days leading up to all of this and the day of. So from the document, Cody Thomas took a look at all of them, pulled out some of the interesting parts of these interviews, which include observations of Sheriff Mickey Stines, what he was doing, his behavior, etc. Take a listen.
Attorney and Mullins' close friend Daniel Dotson said that the defendant never threatened him or Judge Mullins, but that he was so concerned about Mickey's demeanor, he contacted the Kentucky Bar Association to determine what action he could take. Dotson said that Mickey was, quote, criminally insane. Whitesburg Police Chief Tyrone Fields told Dotson that on Wednesday night, the night prior to the shooting, that Mickey had called him, and when he got off the phone, he told his wife, "That son of a bitch has lost his mind," in reference to the defendant. Christine Bowling, LCSO staff, told the KSP that the staff had stated they were concerned about Mickey due to his very strange behavior. Specifically, the day prior to the shooting, the sheriff told her that Daniel Dotson had told him to give him money and kill himself, or they were going to kill Caroline and Lila, the wife and daughter. LaShawna Frazier, staff of LCSO, told KSP that she had asked Dr. McDougal to move up the sheriff's upcoming doctor's appointment because she was very worried about him. Frazier stated that the sheriff was encouraged to go to the doctor because he had some kind of psychosis going on. Frazier stated that en route to the doctor, the sheriff stopped by his wife's office to check on her. Sherry Stines, the defendant's aunt, told KSP Detective Anthony Trotter that Mickey was concerned that someone was on the back street near where he lived watching his house. She stated he didn't act like himself. She stated that he could not sleep. Sherry Stines called and informed Trotter that Mickey had called her on the day of the shooting and asked about where his grandmother nicknamed Bones was that day. Bones had been dead for 3 years at the time of that call.
This was not a mystery. Like, everybody was making these observations and noticing things about Sheriff Mickey Stines. Something was wrong here. Something was very wrong. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation, and could be perhaps the most important question for the trial of Mickey Stines. What was going on inside Sheriff Stines' mind? What was his state of mental health? What was he thinking? Was it delusional? Was it psychotic? Here to help with our investigation is psychiatrist, forensic specialist, and medical health expert, Dr. Yalda Safai. Also joining us, licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. Thank you both for being here. I want to give you a little more information here, and then you can tell us what it means, your thoughts about his actions, etc. From Stines' attorneys, again, this is from the papers filed by Mickey Stines' attorney. Dr. McDougal, who saw the defendant the day prior to the shooting at the urging of his family and coworkers, diagnosed an acute stress reaction. Acute stress reaction. This is the day before. Then, mental health evaluations that were initiated by the government vis-a-vis the jail. This is afterwards. Those evaluations included observations of, quote, active psychosis. The person who evaluated Sheriff Stines in the jail after the shooting marked yes for acute psychosis and wrote this note. Upon evaluation of Mr. Stines, it appears that he is still in an active state of psychosis. Dr. Yalda Safai, first, explain to us, what does that mean?
Well, acute stress disorder is a little bit different from active psychosis. Acute stress disorder is a collection of symptoms that are usually in response to a traumatic event in one's life or a significant stressor. In this case, he was battling a civil case, which could have been the stressor. And that collection of symptoms is alterations in mood, dissociations, problems sleeping, hyperarousal. It's really like PTSD symptoms, but they're not supposed to last more than 4 weeks. Now, active psychosis is a little bit different. Psychosis is a collection of symptoms, including hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and disorganized behavior. It's very possible that he was having both of these at the same time. Why? I don't know. We don't know his past history of mental illness. We don't know if he's been psychotic in the past or not. But, you know, I've seen this a lot with treating inmates, that acute stress disorder is very possible. And I see a lot of inmates coming in with active psychosis. In the midst of a psychotic episode, they end up committing a crime. So this is very common in a correctional facility setting.
Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, all those observations from the people in his life and around him, what does it tell you? And then knowing what the two doctors have said here, the acute stress reaction before the shooting and acute psychosis afterwards in these two evaluations, what are the pieces here that you're putting together?
Yeah, so it's obvious that the people in his life, the people closest to him, noticed that he was not himself. They noticed an increase in paranoid thinking that was very unlike him. They noticed that he was not sleeping. There was considerable weight loss. He was extremely concerned about the safety of his family. It sounds kind of out of context, and so much so that the people closest to him were making doctor's appointments for him. They were taking him to the doctor. They were extremely concerned about his well-being. So when you have that many people around you that concerned about you, it tells you right away that this is not his normal state of functioning. Now, does that mean that there have been prior episodes of mental health issues? We don't know. Like was said before, we don't have that history. But from what we can see, at least from what people are saying about him, this is clearly a change in functioning from what they're used to.
So, Dr. Safai, this guy is law enforcement, big tough guy, very protective of his family, was very well liked by people in the community. Obviously, they elected him sheriff. They trusted him. And it's a civil lawsuit, right? A civil lawsuit about some really horrific allegations of extorting women for sex inside the courthouse, some inside the judge's chambers, including one of his deputies who had already been prosecuted for this years before in a criminal sense. Would there have to be more to have someone unravel in their life? Is there something biological to it, or could it just be the stress of the situation?
Oh, it could definitely be the stress of the situation. Remember, people have different thresholds to stress. So one thing that could stress you out might not stress me out. But given the allegations against him, given that he was an upstanding citizen of the community, having such strong allegations against you, I mean, I think that in itself would have been a major stressor for him and could possibly put him over the edge, so to speak. But, you know, the same kind of allegations might have not been stressful to another type of person. But as we can clearly see here, he was not behaving like he normally did, and there was this prior stressor. So you can draw a conclusion that a lot of his behaviors and the acute stress disorder that he was diagnosed with was a direct result of this prior civil lawsuit type stressor.
Dr. Zuckerman, is there any way to tell if someone who's undergoing this level of stress or psychosis, whichever it is at the time, can you tell if it's going to get dangerous? Are there indicators of okay, someone is saying or doing certain things and that could pose a danger to himself or others?
Yeah, so you obviously want to see if he's combative in any way. You want to see if he is making any threats to harm himself or to harm other people. Obviously, if there is an acute psychosis, which it appears that there was, or that there is, when you are not medicated properly, those symptoms can obviously increase and become worse. We don't know what he's responding to internally, but it seems that there is internal stimuli that he's absolutely responding to. You can hear it when he, you can see it when he speaks, when he's talking, seems distracted and disorganized. So I would say, if these symptoms are left untreated and there's, extremely high paranoia, agitation in particular, you could see a worsening of those symptoms for sure.
And Dr. Safai, last question that we have here. What made him different is he's the sheriff. He's the sheriff. He's in charge of an office. He's in charge of the jail. He's in charge of his weapons. He's in charge of his deputies. If we go to the day before, acute stress reaction, is that something where maybe someone should take time off? Can someone still work if you have acute stress reaction taking place in your life? If you're in a job like law enforcement with a gun?
Well, it depends. So acute stress disorder is a collection of symptoms. It can be alterations of mood, problems sleeping, hyperarousal, hypervigilance, sometimes dissociation and paranoia. Some people have a mild case of it. They might just have a little bit of alterations in mood. In that case, they can continue with their daily lives and hopefully, with proper guidance and treatment, their symptoms resolve. Other people who have more serious symptoms, if I were a physician, I would advise this person to take some time off, especially given that he does have access to guns. So it really depends on the severity of the symptoms that he was experiencing.
All right, big thank you. Great insight, Dr. Yalda Safai, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. Thank you both so much. Coming up next, why was Judge Mullins the sheriff's target?
I had a lot of really negative experiences with a lot of people from that courthouse.
Sunday nights on Court TV. Join us for a night of food, friends, and our favorite legal dramas. It's Order in the Court, and this week...
I'm Dr. Jason Bull. I study a jury's behavioral patterns. Not guilty, thank you. The verdict you get depends on me. You don't get a name like Bull because you give up before the game is over.
We're binge-watching Bull, Sunday starting at 6, 5 Central on Court TV.
I've seen Judge Mullins have sex with a girl.
Who was the girl?
I don't know. Because I don't know a lot of people from Robertson.
Where was it at?
In his office, in the judge's chambers.
Is that the same place that you were meeting Ben? Is that how you know it was the judge's chambers?
Yeah.
And this was Judge who?
Mullins.
Some serious allegations being made against Judge Kevin Mullins. Now, we know there was this sextortion case emanating out of the judge's chambers and other places in the courthouse involving deputies and perhaps others extorting women who were in trouble with the law for sexual favors, so they either would get their ankle monitors for free or get whatever else they needed done inside the courthouse. It's a huge scandal. It was part of the civil suit that Sheriff Mickey Stines was being deposed about a couple of days before he shot Judge Kevin Mullins. I want you to take a look at this because this was important. Again, this is from the interviews that the Kentucky State Police did. An attorney named Daniel Dotson also told the Kentucky State Police that he spoke to Judge Kevin Mullins and told him that Mickey was, quote, losing it and, quote, couldn't take this kind of pressure, in reference to the civil suit involving, quote, some crack bleep wanting money. So it seems here Judge Kevin Mullins, before he's ever shot by Mickey Stines, understands that Mickey Stines can't take the pressure of this lawsuit because Mickey Stines has been named in the lawsuit. But then we get back to what this case is about, the shooting of Judge Mullins. And that brings us to our next question. Why was Judge Mullins the sheriff's target? Again, we're in the midst of his alleged delusional thinking at the time, but why does the sheriff become the target if he's feeling the pressure from this civil lawsuit? Here to help answer that question is the attorney representing the woman who's suing Mickey Stines, Ned Pillersdorf, and retired police detective and forensic educator Dr. Mike McCutcheon. Thank you both for being here. Ned, I need to read another part of what was revealed in these papers filed by Mickey Stines' attorney. In the same interview, attorney Daniel Dotson ponders, so he's thinking out loud, ponders if Judge Mullins was supplying information in the civil suit and suggests that the Kentucky State Police talked to Ned Pillersdorf to determine if Mullins was supplying information because Mullins, quote, thought Mickey was trying to get him. Ned, what does that mean to you? And were you getting fed information by the judge to get back at Mickey because the judge thought Mickey was trying to get him?
Nobody was supplying me information. I was not a very popular person in the Letcher courthouse after we filed the lawsuit. And, you know, what's really clear from all of this, you said it, there's been some active delusional thinking going on. And in this case, I think the delusional thinking with these kind of paranoid conspiracies, you know, to be clear, Stines was named in the lawsuit, but actually in his official capacity. To understand the lawsuit, it was that Stines' deputy, Fields, who pled guilty to sexually extorting several women, and where Stines was named was that he knew or should have known this was going on. So there was no real active allegations that Stines was in on the sex. That we thought there was circumstantial evidence that he knew or should have known. But, you know, who'd have thunk it that when we filed this lawsuit, and my co-counsel took Stines' deposition, I was there for some of it on Monday, who'd have thunk it that 3 days later he'd shoot the judge? It was a strange deposition. Stines was, he was asked, you know, simple questions, long pauses, no answers. I thought there was something going on, but I had no idea there was all these paranoid, hallucinating thoughts going through his mind. I just thought he was odd.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, what are your thoughts here on why he targeted the judge in all of this? And I know it's a tough thing because we're trying to get inside perhaps the mind of someone who's in the midst of psychosis. But why do you think the focus became Judge Kevin Mullins?
Well, it's, you know, as I've said before, is that murder is just conflict resolution for the offender. So there's something here that he believes the judge has some type of involvement in whatever emotion, and if whether we're talking about whether his psychosis or not, but something is driving, some emotion is driving that behavior. And in his mind, the solution, the conflict resolution, is to kill Judge Mullins to solve his problem. Whether it is real or not, whether it's based in fact or not, is irrelevant, because perception is reality. So if his perception was that the judge was feeding net information or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter if it's real, because someone who's in a psychosis, it's real to them. Their perception is reality. And if he believed that that was the case, or any other involvement pushing his, this case against him, that's his perception. And for him to solve this problem, was killing the judge was the resolution that he needed to do to solve his problem. What that specific thing was, we may not know.
Let me ask you, Ned, in the civil lawsuit, would Mickey Stines be personally responsible for money? Is there an insurance carrier who has coverage? Does the county cover it? How does that work? 'Cause I'm trying to understand his extreme level of stress, whether it comes from losing money, or is it losing reputation? Or I'm trying to understand how the lawsuit, in the end, if he lost, would personally impact Mickey Stines.
My speculation is I don't think it was money. I think it was more so that his deputy, who was also the ankle monitor person who engaged in the sexual extortion, was just so close to him. And I think that we're talking about a person obviously who's paranoid and delusional and psychotic. I don't think the money aspect had anything to do with it. I just think, looking back, I guess we just underestimated the impact the lawsuit had on the people involved. And we had a sheriff who, melted down, whatever you want to use. But, looking back, it's just an astonishing series of events. But I guess the lesson learned is, when you file a lawsuit like this, you sometimes wonder how it impacts people. And it's distressing in the sense that, we filed a lawsuit that led to somebody dying. And that does bother me. On the other hand, I suspect that Stines has probably a pretty legitimate mental illness defense. That's how I look at it as a criminal defense lawyer. But it's no telling how this case is going to turn out.
Oh.
It is a death penalty case.
I know. Everything is at stake. All right, Ned and Dr. Mike McCutcheon staying with us. Still to come, why didn't anyone intervene? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the caught-on-video execution of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins. Now, there is much more insight into what happened and perhaps why it happened. Here's the story. In a courthouse where justice once echoed, Sheriff Mickey Stines allegedly brought chaos and bloodshed, fatally shooting Judge Kevin Mullins in his own chambers. The shocking act came just days after Stines sat for a deposition in a tense civil case, one that colleagues say left him visibly shaken. Once a man trusted to uphold the law, he now stands accused of shattering it in the most tragic way. As investigators probe his state of mind, friends describe erratic behavior, paranoia, and a growing storm inside of him. Was it anger over the lawsuit or something deeper, something broken within that turned a sheriff's duty into a deadly delusion? So there are, as we've been talking about here, people who noticed this behavior by Sheriff Mickey Stines in the days and the hours leading up to the shooting. People who interacted with him, who saw him and noticed him, and the sheriff was doing certain things in those moments leading up to it. All of it very significant in trying to paint a picture of what exactly was happening and why it was happening. Cody Thomas, Court TV field reporter, takes a look now at some of the things that the sheriff was doing and what people were observing in the moments leading up to the shooting.
On September 16th, 3 days before the shooting, Sheriff Mickey Stines had a deposition in a civil lawsuit. The suit makes claims of a sextortion plot. government officials exchanging legal leniency for sexual favors. The two female accusers allege that Ben Fields, who was a sheriff's deputy at the time, coerced them into having sex with him in order for her to avoid paying court fees. The accuser's lawyer, Ned Pillersdorf, says the lawsuit exposes systemic problems involving corruption in the criminal justice system in Letcher County, Kentucky.
On the Monday we took Sheriff Stines' deposition, he was acting odd, tense, whatever word you want to use.
On September 18th, the day before the shooting, Sheriff Stines makes an unusual request of a staff member of the sheriff's office. They said he told them to get his bulletproof vest. He insisted on going home to check on his wife, and he asked to have someone call and check on his daughter, Lila. That same day, September 18th, the day before the shooting, Sheriff Stines saw a doctor to discuss his mental health. A family member and many friends had been pleading with him to get this kind of help. Then, the day of the shooting, September 19th, Sheriff Stines went on a food delivery trip. It's something he often did. He went with a man who we know as Michael Clark, who says he was working for an addiction recovery program. Stines' defense wrote that a sheriff's office staff member said this about the trip, and that it mirrors what Clark told state police. Quote, "The recipients of the food were acting strangely and were wanting Stines to take the food up on a hill, and the recipients wanted to take them up on a hill on a side-by-side."
On the delivery, there was an incident where our client was asked to deliver to another place that was not the normal place where he did the deliveries for this particular individual. And the witness will testify that at this point he was very concerned that there was an attempt to isolate him and to cause him harm.
13 minutes before the shooting, we see Sheriff Stines returning with Michael Clark, walking into the judge's chambers.
So you've got all these things happening, the observations of this unusual behavior, this sleeplessness, this paranoia setting in. Bulletproof vest to go visit your wife? You're delivering food and you think you're being set up as a target for something? And then your family and friends so concerned that they're making sure you get to an appointment to see your doctor. All of this is happening, yet he is still, I guess, working as the armed sheriff of Letcher County. And the next question is not an accusal. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I'm just wondering. I think it's an important question here. Why didn't anyone intervene? To me, did they not think this was so serious? Were they afraid to intervene? What is going on here? Because he's the sheriff, he's in charge of the county's law enforcement, but all these strange things are being observed in this behavior. Here to help with our investigation, the host of Hillbilly Crime on YouTube, Elizabeth Jones. Also joining us, retired police detective, forensic educator, Dr. Mike McCutcheon. Let me ask you, Elizabeth, what are your thoughts here about, like, people intervened to the point of getting him to see a doctor, but why do you think no one intervened to say, hey, maybe Mickey shouldn't be sheriff for a while, maybe Mickey shouldn't have a gun, or maybe Mickey needs a little more than just a visit to his regular doctor? Like, why do you think that's how this played out?
Well, I asked those very questions early on in this investigation. This did not happen in a vacuum. We have to remember that. And I think we also have to remember that it's happened in a system where power has went unchecked for a very long time. And when those in power believe the rules don't apply to them, then everyone around them also starts acting like the rules don't apply to them either. And I think that day showed us the cost of that culture.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, what are your thoughts here on the mentality, right? Even of, you know, he's the sheriff and you've got deputies. He's got people working. Everyone's noticing this. Everyone knows the sheriff is not right. Why do you think that it didn't go to the next level of intervention?
Well, you know, I'll peel back the curtain. So I have 20 years experience as law enforcement. And the sad truth is mental health is the secret we don't talk about. And you can't, you know, hindsight, you can't look back in 2020 hindsight and be like, oh, everybody should have said something. And people are probably, hey, you okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And then you talk and you say, man, he is being weird, man. Something's wrong with him. But you're not thinking it's going to get to this point. And, you know, sad to say, sometimes we ignore that because we think, well, he's the sheriff. We're the ones going out there. We don't have to worry about it. He'll be fine. And you don't think it's going to come to this. And mental health within law enforcement, or lack of it, is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And secondly, it's even more difficult when it's the boss. If you had your partner and they were experiencing this stuff, maybe you're very close with them, and you go to your supervisor, to the sheriff, and say, Sheriff, he shouldn't be on the road. She should be here, whatever it may be. But if it's the boss, that might be more difficult. And again, you know, we look at it, how Elizabeth said, it's not in a vacuum. We can't just look and say, would I say something? I don't know. How weird was it? Like, what did we know at that time? Am I going to take his gun as a deputy and be like, no, you're not going out on the road? I can't say that I would, because I don't know in that situation. And it's a tough situation for those around him to make that choice.
I know. And that's why I don't want this interpreted to be that we're accusing anyone of anything. We're just trying to understand.
Yeah,
we're trying to understand. Because even the local, the Whitesburg police chief had a phone call with him the night before, and he hung up the phone and talked to his lawyer. He said, this guy's out of his mind. Well, that guy is the sheriff. Like, wow. Okay, here's something else. I want you to listen to this, Elizabeth. This is Paige Hall talking about going to lunch and what people observed about the sheriff and his weapon.
We all went to lunch together today. Mickey and Kevin, Christy, Tim, Michael Clark. We had a street fight, and Mickey acted really strange today. I've been around him a lot. He's always a real fun, cut-up, you know, easy-going guy, and he acted strange at lunch. And I don't know if this matters, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because it's odd to me. He leaned back in his chair at lunch, and they were talking about re-election. He said, I'll never make it to the next election. Thought that was odd when he said it. Didn't really know what he meant by that. And he was, you know, leaning back, his gun was right in front, and Michael Clark looked over and he said, it's an awful big gun you got there. He said, yeah. He said, these are hot. And he said, oh, I don't know. He said, it looks like you followed the numbers off of it, which was odd then, but now I'm kind of wondering if it was in fact a gun that had the numbers followed off.
Elizabeth, what do we know about we could see it here, the gun, and was it his actual service revolver, or was it a private gun? Because he's not even in uniform that day.
Well, he's not in uniform, but that is a sheriff's department polo. So it is kind of like a sheriff's shirt. It's just not his uniform. I have lots of questions about that whole thing right there. You know, having the serial numbers filed off of a gun sitting there at lunch, and then nobody even questions this. See, this is the culture that I talk about. that I've been talking about for so long. Nobody asks any questions. Nobody challenges anything. It kind of appears like just however the day was going and whatever they chose to do, everybody just let it go. Nobody questioned anything. And that's a culture.
All right, Elizabeth Jones is going to stick around. Dr. Mike McCutcheon, thank you so much for your insight and honesty. We appreciate it. Coming up next, do people in Letcher County have sympathy for Sheriff Stines?
Y'all are gonna kill me, I know you are.
Here you are, responsible for the lifelong torment of an entire family. Is that evil in your mind now? So now you've taken her mother's life, and you heroically step in to console her.
I knew it was wrong, but yeah, I still did it.
Did you murder her mother to try and drive her back into your arms? Oh my God.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
What are your thoughts about the sheriff?
He's my hero. I mean, I'm sure that he's not a perfect man. Nobody is. But he's my hero, regardless.
As Taya Adams, one of Judge Kevin Mullins' accusers on our show, referring to the sheriff as her hero after he shot and killed the judge in cold blood. That was a shocking moment on the show, but very revealing about her thoughts about what was happening in Letcher County. Take a listen to more of what she had to say, because I think all of it is very important and very significant in how this case is perceived. And what happened at 16? At some point, did this become what we're talking about here, inappropriate behavior?
The first time that I was alone with him, the first time I was alone with him was the first time that he was inappropriate with me, and he had me give him oral, and he paid me for it, and he told me to clean myself up and not to tell anybody.
How old are you at this time?
I was 16. Favors for diversion, favors to pay a fine off, take care of a ticket. I mean, various things. In the chambers, somewhere in the courthouse. There's rooms all over the courthouse that I've been taken to over the years. I've met him like at the strip job in Whitesburg, different places. Everybody knows.
Everybody knows. It's common knowledge out there.
Mm-hmm. There are hundreds of victims. That's not an exaggeration.
So if everybody knows about this, right, and knows about this behavior that was taking place at the courthouse and in the system of justice, and Mickey Stines is the one who, through his actions, sort of put a spotlight on all of this. Even though he's accused of murder, facing a potential death sentence, how are people looking at him in light of what he did? Then you've got the other aspect of this case, which is obvious mental health issues for the sheriff, who's feeling the pressure from this civil suit and other things that were going on. So I'm wondering what impact all of these elements have in this case. And it brings us to the next question in our investigation. Do people in Letcher County have sympathy for Sheriff Stines? They're the ones who elected him sheriff, but he's the one who shot and killed the judge in cold blood. Here to help answer that question, host of Hillbilly Crime on YouTube, Elizabeth Jones, and still with us, the attorney representing the woman suing Mickey Stines, Ned Pillersdorf. Elizabeth, what are your thoughts here? Do people in Letcher County feel sympathy for Mickey Stines?
Well, Vinnie, it's really complicated. That question is complicated, and I think it's really starting to open a new level. So at first, I think everybody was kind of introduced to this as it was victims. Victims. Well, and I kind of think that the landscape has changed some to where kind of what Taya just said in that interview. I think what we're really looking at is prostitution. I think the judge may, along with other people, allegedly had participated in some prostitution activities, which I think is different if we really wanted to get down into that conversation. I think it's different than I'm going to put you in jail and keep you there until you do sex favors for us. I think what a lot of people are looking at this as now is, you know, there were women who willingly participated in sex work. And allegedly, you know, Judge Mullins may have been a participant in that as well. And so I think that there's just a much larger conversation, and I think this is going to play out a little bit differently than what we first thought.
Ned, what are your thoughts about the sympathies in this case?
Well, the fact that the defendant wants to be tried in Letcher County for killing the local judge tells you Stines' defense thinks there's sympathy. You know, the important thing that's really going on in all this is what's changed in my 44 years of practice. If you walk into an Appalachian courtroom, you see lots of women who are easily subject to sexual exploitation. That's one of the reasons we filed a lawsuit. And I don't think, you know, the actual lawsuit references 3 women who were mistreated by, who were sexually extorted by Fields. There's actually more, in my opinion. And we don't think this lawsuit, what happened in Letcher County, is isolated. The reality is, in an Appalachian courtroom, lots of women are there, and the only way to get them out is ankle bracelet, drug court, or rehabilitation. And they're so easily subject to sexual exploitation, which is one of the reasons why I initially agreed to get involved in the case, because I don't think what happened in Letcher County is isolated. And it's a real problem where they set high cash bonds, which is a real controversial problem. And all of these women are so easily subject to sexual exploitation. Whether Mullins was involved or not, that's something I think we'll hear about in the criminal case. I assume, you know, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I don't have any love for Stines. I've sued him twice. But I think one of the defenses would be he's not really a victim. He was involved in some bad behavior. And whether that's true or not, who knows? But I think that's where this is all going.
Elizabeth, we have about 15 seconds left here. If you had to evaluate the sympathies in this case, who appears more sympathetic right now? Is it the judge, Kevin Mullins, or the Sheriff, Mickey Stines?
Well, I'll leave you with this, Vinnie. After we're over a year after this shooting now, and there is still not one piece of evidence that has come out that Judge Mullins did anything.
All right. Elizabeth Jones, Hillbilly Crime, Ned Pillersdorf, great to have you both. Thank you so much for your valuable time. You know, this case is so unique. We've never really seen anything like it or experienced a potential defense like the one we may see at trial, which includes horrific alleged behavior by the victim and a defendant in a fact-based delusion. This is one where the jury may end up having more questions than we do. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.